Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this free webinar, Evaluating Research and Development Product Package. This package is being developed for all types of accounting firms to utilize, but we have made a particular target of preparing material that small and medium-sized accountancy firms can use to service their clients' requirements so that you can be adding value to those clients by providing this degree of service to them. Because research and development can be part of a trilogy of services for your client. Research and development, perhaps accelerating commercialization grant, and perhaps raising capital as an early stage innovation company, and perhaps becoming the chief financial officer for that client. The research and development material that I'm going to show to you today is the accountant's documents, but we also have the white label documents that are also in the system. And these are the subscribers to be able to download and utilize within their package for their clients. So we're now going to show you the ESS BIZTOOLS website. Which is now on your screen. And we're going to go through to the research and development package, which is obviously a new package which we've developed. And when you go to the research and development, you can download the research and development material, but the package which we are promoting also includes our business advisory training material and the Business Plus newsletters, which are produced each month, and Members Alert, which is a communication we prepare each month for our subscribers. So that's the package. We're going to go back and download the research and development material, and what we're looking for is the accountant's documents. The procedure control form takes you right through the whole system. We have a range of papers, and I'm going to go through these so you can see them. The BAS is Business Advisory Services. That's the forms, which will help you with the overview of the material. And I'm working through to find the flowcharts, which is our latest innovation when it comes to our material to assist accountants and your clients to be able to understand the various aspects of the research and development system. So the first flowcharts now come up, FC050, planning a research and development project. We'll just go through to the end of those so you can then see there are about 10 separate papers on various aspects of research and development that are part of this overall product package to give you an overview of how the whole system works. And then we have workbooks which are there to facilitate the recording of the costs involved in the research and development activities. So if we go back to FC050, and we'll bring that up, this is planning a research and development project. This is very important because everything starts with the plan. This flow chart is looking at all aspects of the material. So I'm just going to make sure that's shared with you. So the concept within research and development normally starts with someone getting an idea. It could be the team leader, it could be the team junior. It doesn't really matter. They've come up with an idea, and the leader might then decide that there's going to be a project. There's going to be a small team put together to do some preliminary investigations. And at the end of that, we're going to look at the research and development eligibility. And that's a separate paper, but that paper will say the eligibility is for a company. And primarily what we're going to be talking about today is for companies with turnovers under $20 million. We have some forms in the system, so I'm just going to show you one of those now. So we'll go into BAS 5505. This is the planning and research and development paper, which you will be able to view when I've put it into here. So you can now view the planning and research and development project paper. This is a form to guide your client through the process. What is the idea? What's the objectives of this project? They should allocate a project number to it. Who was on the original small team? Because there's real questions about protection of intellectual property that needs to be considered by someone in the leadership team. What were the results of the preliminary investigations? And obviously you would expect them to be positive. Otherwise, why are we now looking at spending the company's money on undertaking a formal research and development project? Who's the project leader? And then we get into this very important question of what research has been done on prior art or prior literature, and how have we documented that? And these prior art and prior literature searches are for the world. It's not just for Australia. The Australian government will not fund development of research and development if it's only an Australian invention. They want it to be something that is better than anything in the world. What was the outcome of those searches? And your client needs to be identifying an hypothesis or hypotheses. What are they trying to prove or disprove by these research activities? And what new knowledge are they hoping to achieve? And they have to be able to clarify that the new knowledge that they are planning to produce is going to be different from current knowledge. And they need to be able to explain how this new knowledge has to be developed at the end of the research and development. It cannot be determined now based on current knowledge. If they're proposing to undertake any research in an overseas country, they have to lodge an overseas finding by the 30th of June in the year they undertake the research and development activities. Our recommendation is that they lodge the overseas finding before they spend $1 overseas, because they may find that AusIndustry and the tax office will reject their claim for the necessity for parts of the research and development activity to be conducted overseas. They can also apply for an advance finding if the directors of the company would like some certainty that what they are proposing to do is going to be accepted by the tax office and AusIndustry as being a legitimate research and development project. They can apply for that, but then they need to sit back and wait until they have received the response from the ATO and AusIndustry. It's also a good idea to clearly identify who the project team's going to be, because one of the key issues there is to make sure that they have signed appropriate confidentiality agreements and assignment of intellectual property agreements. There have been some cases where a person who has been employed and their job description is fairly narrowly defined, and they signed a confidentiality agreement based on that narrow description, and they then become a member of the research and development team, but their employment agreement did not relate to their research and development activities. Now, that could be quite expensive for the company if that person turns around and makes a claim on the company that they own part of this product that's been developed, because their employment agreement did not cover their involvement in a research and development activity. It's a good idea also to record so that it's available in the permanent record any people that have been approached for collaboration. First of all, that this product doesn't exist anywhere in the world at present. And secondly, they could be involved in the overall research project. So that's the very beginning to get the activity underway. We continue with our flow charts. The project coordinator should be identified. The prior art searches, I've talked about the documentation. Identification of the new knowledge, the hypothesis, and which competent professionals have been approached. So this is the collaboration part of it. You see there's other forms that have been mentioned in here to clearly identify what's going to be undertaken. And we have a form which is the research and development plan. Now, this is not required by the legislation for companies with turnovers under $20 million, but we are recommending it because it is part of the systematic progression of a activity that we think it's very important that a research and development project plan is prepared for submission to the board of directors. So it incorporates some of the items that were listed in the previous form, the objectives, the prior art searches, the new knowledge. It's giving the board of directors the information for them to make a commercial decision as to whether to allocate 20, 30, 40, 50, 500,000, whatever, to this particular project. And I think this is an important component of the documents, that this whole approach has been taken in a systematic manner. And then there's a budget showing the costs. There's also the research and development project, and the information goes to the board of directors who would consider, especially looking at the overseas finding application and the advanced finding, if there's a decision that they wish to apply for that within Australia. And we could then have a minute of a board of directors meeting approving. So all of this documentation is available for you to be able to show your client how this system works, and they can prepare all of this documentation. So there's the draft of the minutes of the board of directors meeting. What's the purpose of the project, commencement date, completion date, who's in charge, what did the prior art searches tell us, what are the hypotheses for this project? Has the plan been submitted? Has the board approved it? For how much money? So the whole thing's wrapped up very nicely. So that's the planning process. And that's very important to get this whole concept of a research and development project on the right footing. We're now going to go to what we're calling getting ready. The team needs to be appointed. And in looking at the team, which is the employees, first of all, there needs to be consideration given to that issue I raised before. Does their employment agreement cover a research and development activity? Which contractors are they going to engage, or competent professionals? And there should be agreements with these people, and the assignment of intellectual property and confidentiality agreements are very important. Now, these are not taxation or Oz industry issues, but they're very important commercial issues for your client, because they want to make sure that they own this. If they're paying a competent professional or a contractor to do work, they need to tie up the loose ends to make sure that that person cannot come back and make a claim on them that they own 10% or 20% of this new product that's been developed because of sloppy workmanship by the organization. And we've got some records which we're listed in the form. Every R&D project should have a project number. Now, this is for the core research and development activities. These are the activities that are identified in the hypothesis. This is what we want to prove or disprove. And we recommend that there should be task codes, and these should be developed for the individual business. Client I'm working with at present's got over 100 task codes. So instead of someone having to write on a timesheet or enter into a computer package 20 words to describe what they're doing, hopefully the task codes will be able to summarize those 20 words with a reference number. That's what the employee puts into their time recording system, rather than either writing or typing in 20 words. The task codes are very important because it's part of the corporate responsibility to the tax office and Oz industry for the company to be able to clearly articulate what's been done in these research and development activities. Remember, this is a process of self-assessment. So the client needs to get it right. Otherwise, there could be penalties if the tax office claim that this work was not appropriate research and development activities. And please remember, it might be 2, 3, 4 years later before a company is being asked to supply questions. None of the people involved in this original project may still be involved or available. So the records need to be kept appropriately now in a systematic manner, in real time. This is what was done, not sitting down in a year's time, going back and saying, oh, we did such and such on such and such a date, and this is what we did. That is not good enough in 2021. And it's on that basis that we have developed this system. What time units are going to be used? Some people will use hours and minutes. I think they get a bit messy when you're adding them up. You could use time units if you wished, 6 minute, 10 minute, 15 minutes. The work diary needs to be kept. Where were people working on a project? Labor on costs can be added. Obviously the big ones, superannuation, but then the sick and holiday pay, etc. The costing information for contractors and competent professionals should also be kept. Their information will be based on tax invoices, but obviously the team's times will be determined from some sort of timesheet recording mechanism. And that information should be obtained daily for the team members, incorporated into a monthly summary, costed out with that employee's actual labor cost and on-cost amount for that particular month, so that the cost of research and development is known month by month. This is what I believe systematic progression of work means. It's not just all done at the end of the year, and it's not based on percentages, someone guessing how much time people spent. It needs to be recorded properly on their actual time. What I'm sharing with you now is the flow chart relating to planning the research and development work project. So the project coordinator, first of all, I think should make sure before the company starts spending real money that the prior art searches have been conducted appropriately and the results have been documented. It's very important that if someone's searching the internet and they've found some information, they just don't read it and say, oh, that tells us that someone has not got what we're proposing to develop. It needs to be printed, dated and printed so that there is a documentary evidence to submit to the ATO and the Oz industry in the future that this follow-up processing was actually done. And if the company believes that work cannot be done in Australia, there is a series of questions that have to be answered. And these are contained within the form 5528 so that they can be submitted to the tax office for adjudication through the overseas finding application. And the company can prepare a general finding application for work to be conducted in Australia, which also includes the overseas finding, if necessary, and submitted to the ATO and Oz industry, who will give a prior approval. That all takes some time. The next flow chart is on intellectual property. Now, this is not part of the tax office or Oz industry requirements, but again, it's very important from your client, the company, to make sure that appropriate considerations being given within the system to determine whether the knowledge that's being developed is being protected. So we're looking to make sure that the confidentiality agreements have been prepared, the assignment of intellectual property agreements have all been signed and returned. This is what the project manager should be doing before committing any money, before signing off on the agreements with these people. Together with any advice that's been received from experts to say that no one's ever done this in the world. And perhaps there's an alert to the company's patent attorney or to a patent attorney that's now being appointed to see what other information he or she will require to ultimately be able to prepare a patent application. And decisions could then be made on some other activities besides a patent, trademark, registered design, or trade secret type documentation. So as to protect the company's investment in this new asset. And hopefully it is an asset that is being developed. And it's not just a huge cost center. The systematic progression of work. I used that terminology a little bit earlier. This is what the legislation expects companies to follow. This needs to be systematic. It needs to be recorded at the time the work was undertaken, not in 12 months' time when you're getting ready to lodge your research and development registration. So is the material finalized for the researchers? Are the hypothesis identified? Are details going to be kept of the experiments? Has that all been sorted out? Who's going to keep the details? Where are they being recorded? And if it is not an activity to create a systematic progression of work, well, it's probably not claimable. And there should be an ongoing concept that the team that's involved have regular meetings, daily in some cases, weekly, monthly, to report on progress, to discuss issues, and those minutes should be minuted. This is part of the systematic progression of work. And then a report should be submitted regularly, every month, or at the most every 3 months, to the board to keep them informed of what's happening on this project. There's a labour flow chart in the system, which is looking at the collation of information from the timesheets or the other type of recording system that's been implemented by the client, by the company, for the labour costs. And we've developed Excel spreadsheets, which are part of the workbooks that I referred to earlier, that enables that information to be recorded for each individual project code with details of the activities. And if it's a supporting labour activity, what's been done for the supporting activities codes. So a core project only relates to something that is core, that an hypothesis can be identified for, but you can then have supporting research and development projects, which must be linked to a core research and development project. And that expenditure can be claimed in exactly the same way. Flowchart number 056 is a recording of the contractor's costs. Now, these will be based on tax invoices, not on timesheets, but the contractor will be expected to have supplied the project code number and the task code reference numbers, and have broken down their costs to show where they worked and how much has been charged to each component of the research and development activities. Similar costings are maintained for the competent professionals, which again would be based on tax invoices in the main, allocation to project codes, and details of what the task codes were. Or if it's the supporting activity, the supporting project codes would be shown. Other direct costs can also be recorded. Supporting research and development expenditure, I mentioned before, there's a full summary then of how that's collated. And there are some items which may or may not be in supporting research and development. So we've got separate notes on those in the papers that you can read. You want to review a paper, we just go to the paper. That's just an executive summary on that paper. So this is a paper that discusses this whole concept of supporting research and development. As it says there, supporting research and development activities is to support core research and development activities. There is a problem with software development, unfortunately. If the software development is primarily for the developer's own use as an administration tool, then the research and development incentive rebate normally does not apply. That's unfortunate. There's a lot of pressure being put on the government about that, but at this stage, it doesn't apply. And the key thing with supporting research and development, there must be this dominant purpose test. The whole reason for having the supporting activity must be linked to one or more core research and development projects. So there's a document within our system that you would complete that clearly identifies the reason we're doing this. And we're claiming it as supporting research and development. So this is the assessing dominant purpose of supporting R&D activity relative to a core R&D activity. What's the supporting R&D number? What's the relationship to the core activity? And so on. So that all aspects of the requirements from the legislation and the documentation from the tax office and Oz industry is being attended to. So in this way, we're assembling the research and development's supporting activity costs. And we're indicating the way those general costs have been distributed. One of the big calculations in research and development is feedstock. Now, feedstock is basically defined as any product that's been produced and sold or used for the company's own purpose that has originated from the research and development activity undertaken in that financial year by the company. Basically, what the government wants is there to be a clawback of some benefits that the company is now obtaining through being able to sell those products. A clawback because the company's been able to claim the full 43.5% of expenditure as a research and development incentive rebate item. So these charts explain how that all works, so the company can determine the feedstock adjustment. There's a lot of record keeping in this system. As you can see, that looks a complicated chart, but it's not that complicated. Basically, we're saying we're going to have labour and labour on costs that's either going to research and development projects or it's going to R&D supporting activities. The same with contractors costs, the same with competent professional costs, and the same with other direct costs. So this is the only way that core research and development costs are developed. For supporting, there's these sort of activities, plus a few others, which we'll show to you in a moment. We then have the calculation of the tax incentive calculations. So the tax incentive is calculated based on the labour costs and the labour on costs, together with the contractors, other professionals and other direct costs that we talked about before. Then we got the progressive supporting costs, same things. And then we got direct allocations, which are determined from the profit and loss account. If there's been payments to associates, the only amount that's able to be claimed for research and development purposes is the actual cash amount paid to that associate during the 12 months of the financial year, irrespective of whether the company is lodging its tax return on an accruals basis. It is only able to claim the actual cash payments. So a return of payments to associates needs to be submitted. And then we have the documentation that has to be submitted to the tax office for the research and development projects. It's the project code, the project title, the date, commenced, the last entry, and the cost carried forward from the previous year. What's now carried forward to the next year. And we also have the information that has to be disclosed in the research and development registration with Oz Industry. Now, this can be a document that's some pages thick. Some companies use 3 or 4 A4 pages for each R&D project. So if you've got 10 of them, it starts becoming a big document. And what we're looking at here is the project code, the titles, details of the hypothesis, details of all the experiments conducted and the results of those experiments, the observations or evaluations or conclusions that have been reached by the team from those projects, and the conclusion that's been reached. The other activity that can occur in research and development is that the company has received loan funds from an Australian state or territory government. And those loan funds specifically indicated that either all or some of that money was being advanced to the company for research and development purposes. In that case, there could also be a loan clawback document that has to be prepared and submitted to the tax office as part of this annual return basis. So that documentation also has to be prepared. So that's the overview of the research and development system that we have prepared to assist accountants at all levels. But we hope that small and medium-sized accounting firms will be able to utilize this to be able to offer a great system to your clients, whereby you will look after them at the very beginning when they develop a research and development project, and that if it's desired by the client, you're able to assist them then with a grant application for the Accelerating Commercialization Grant, if that's what they wanted, and potentially a early stage innovation company application, or perhaps a crowdsourced funding equity raising application. It's an interesting journey, and it's one that we're looking forward to being able to assist accountants, business advisors all over Australia in being able to supply these services. Over 13,000 companies are applying for the research and development incentive rebate each year. How many of them are your companies, your clients? Could you do more work for them? Could you build this bond with your clients that you will grow with your client so that you're able to supply this great range of services to your clients? So that's research and development. I think it's worthwhile you looking at. Why don't ask your clients whether they've undertaken research and development? I read a report the other day which said in the areas that have been subjected to lockdowns during the COVID-19 crisis, the number of patent applications has increased significantly. I think that's probably happened all over Australia, and there's a great opportunity for proactive accountants to be able to offer these services to your clients. If you need further information, you can contact me so that I can get you some further information so that we're able to show you what we can do to help you in that area. So thank you very much for your interest in being with us today, and I hope to talk to you again very shortly. If you have any questions, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or you could telephone me on 1-800-232-088, 1-800-232-088. Have a great day. Goodbye.